The creation of the Empire Damascus pistols was a real challenge to us. It gave us the opportunity to take Damascus to a level it had never been done before in firearms. And that journey, while difficult, also showed that possibility. These guns represent the highest possibility of use, extent of use in a 1911, and as well as making, the highest rarity of a collectible in terms of a pair of 1911s. We're very proud of that set. I'm also very thankful to the owner that commissioned this work. It allowed us the opportunity to explore. It allowed us the opportunity to push the boundaries of materials and further set us on our way in our journey in using Damascus, to which we continue to this day. So back in 2013, we made our first pistols from Artisan Damascus. That was the first 1911 with a Artisan Damascus upper that had ever been constructed. And that led us down a journey, a multi-year journey, a journey of learning. And today we're going to talk about the making of a project we call the Empire Damascus.
So the Empire Damascus set is something that was actually completed before I started here at Cabot, but I really love referring people to the page on our website about it and showing people photos of it, because to my knowledge, this was the first time that we made the slide, the frame, but the small parts, the grip safety, the thumb safety, all of these different parts out of Damascus steel. And the reason I like this is not only is it unbelievably difficult to do, machining and finishing Damascus steel for just a frame and a slide is difficult enough, but the small parts adds a whole nother dimension of difficulty.
This originated back in 2016. One of the privileges that I have is working with clients that will allow you to chase an idea, pursue a project that hadn't been done before. And in this case, we were challenged to create a pistol set. So this is two guns, and not just two guns, but a mirror image right and left-hand pistol in Damascus. The further challenge was to explore what the maximum potential use of Damascus can be on a 1911. So in this case, it was the slide, the frame, the small parts, everything in Damascus steel, but also to incorporate personal elements to the owner. And hence that journey began. The process in building a set like this is often a multi-year process. And this one took a little over 2 years from, okay, we're gonna build it, commission the material, start that process, machining, finish, presentation details, through through completion.
Not only is that difficult to do, but it also shows just how many parts at a bare minimum that we make in-house. Because many people can say, oh, we make these parts, but you know, how do you know if they're actually making the parts that are going into your gun? Well, the fact that we have the thumb safety, the grip safety, the mainspring housing, the extractor. You look at the back of the gun, the extractor was made out of Damascus steel. And when you go to the website, we have a photo of all the parts blown out, so the whole gun disassembled with all the Damascus steel parts on there, where you can just say, well, if you'd like to know the parts that we make here, go look at the Damascus steel parts. I think the plunger tube was even made out of Damascus steel, okay? So when you look at all those different parts, that's what we make in-house. And not only do we make them in-house, but we have the knowledge and the ability to make them out of Damascus steel and then etch them and finish them so that they're not only beautiful, but they're beautiful and functional. So while this project happened before I was here, I am a huge fan of the Empire Damascus.
The Empire set, where do I start? Incredibly complex pistols. Typically when we look at doing a Damascus pistol, you know, we've got a couple large components. Maybe it's a slide and some grips, or, you know, a slide and a frame. You're working with really big pieces of Damascus and really big components. But when you start talking about a set like the Empire, you've got all of these teeny tiny little parts and components. I don't think most people realize how many small components there are to a 1911, something like a plunger tube, right? Tiny little part, a couple little feet, and a big hole that goes through it. To make all of those small parts out of Damascus is unlike anything anyone's ever done before. The challenge is set forth in not only making all of these small parts out of Damascus to match, but also doing a mirror image set on top of that just adds to the complexity. It would be enough to ask a machinist to make all of these parts to go together in a completely custom shop that is just focused on that one project. But aligning a lot of this stuff with current production throws another curveball at you. Part of the challenges of building a set like this is finding the time to work it into the normal production flow of everyday Cabot guns that we make, and go, okay, all right, we can pull this setup, and now we're gonna set up this job specifically to make a Damascus Cabot hammer, 2 of them, and then go back to production. It's incredibly time consuming, and you have to be very methodical about the entire process of, you know, how we can fit this in, how we can make it work. The fixturing might change. The material often isn't in the same configuration or the same size as material that we would typically use to make those parts. So overcoming some of those obstacles with work holding, well, how are we going to hang on to this piece while we machine it? We've only got so much of it. These are the things that we have to take into consideration.
One of the elements was procuring the highest quality stainless steel layered Damascus for the project. These were massive blocks that were commissioned and built and were the basis of the project. One of the things to keep in mind is you need a very large piece to make a slide. You need a very large piece to make a frame, but you also need fairly large chunks of Damascus to make a small part. One example would be if you think of something simple like the thumb safety on a gun. You might see the paddle, the external lever, but the paddle and the stem of that is, you know, an extra this big, so you need a very large block to start. So constructing all these small pieces is a very, very large and complex process. And in fact, I would say that making the small parts on a gun all in Damascus is more work than making a frame and a slide, perhaps both together. So the ambition, the scale, the use of this material is unprecedented as it was in this project. And maybe we've done on one other occasion to date. But today we'll share more of the details on this marvelous pistol set called the Empire Damascus.
When most people think of a machine shop, there's a pretty distinct image that comes to mind of, maybe people on like an assembly line who, punch in, punch out, walk up to a machine and churn parts out. And that's never really been Cabot's approach. The machinists that we have on staff are highly, highly capable people that touch on all elements of it. They're highly involved with QA, QC, they're highly involved with programming, they're highly involved with setup, fixturing, new ideas, innovations on ways to do things differently. Every single person that we have has the ability to move and pivot. You take these highly skilled machinists that have the technological background combined with the skill and practical knowledge to be able to pull off some of these different setups and things that we need to pull some of these different parts. When you start adding some of these abstract variables like meteorite or like Damascus into the mix, that's when they go from the level of machinist to really a craftsman. Even though we're using machines and different tools to sort of complete these tasks, it's much like, being on a motorcycle and melting into the road, becoming one with that machine. The complexity and the intuition that goes into it is, it's not really something that you can find on an assembly line.
Empire Damascus was a fantastic project. It was early on in my career at Cabot, and we were really trailblazing our Damascus finishing at that point. We were working with Damascus frame and slide and small parts, and it was just a whole new world that was opening up to us, and we just had to find every single part of it and figure it all out along the way.
Looking back on the way that these pistols turned out is just completely mind-blowing. We get caught up in the day-to-day life of, manufacturing. And by the time we're nearing completion with one project, we've got 20 more on the horizon. And going back and looking at some of these things that we've done, a year, couple of years, handful of years ago, is really a good reminder of, wow, we did something really crazy. And at that moment in time, you don't even realize the complexity of the thing that you're doing. You just work to accomplish it and get it done. And to look back on something like this, it's mind-blowing to think that even came out of our shop.
Some of the challenges of the Empire Damascus set was just the sheer number of Damascus parts. You're talking small parts, the frame, the slide, and you have to make sure that even after the finishing process and etching, that you still have a gun that's performing at its peak. And you throw on top of that some meteorite and finishing that and getting that exactly where we wanting it and tuning it right in. It was a challenge, but a challenge I'm grateful to have been part of.
At Cabot, we're always growing and coming up with new advancements in our process and the way that we handle materials, and having new discoveries and figuring out different ways to finish things and machine things. So to think that this particular set was done back in 2016 compared to how we do things today makes it even more impressive to look back and think, wow, how do we even accomplish that? That'd be a real chore to do that again today with all of our newest advancements. It's there's no amount of technology or machinery or even experience that can really prepare you for what Damascus has in store for you.
I hope you enjoyed this video on the making of the Empire Damascus pistols. Help us out. We don't have a big YouTube subscriber base. Hit subscribe to that button, and we'll do our best to keep on bringing you some videos with some background insights into some of the craziest 1911s you'll ever see.